The Fallen Goddess Scenario in 9 episodes. Episode 4, Unilateral Dreaming. In the galactic arms, planets, comets, and stars arise and dissolve over incalculable periods of time. The granular material of the spiral arms is the dema, dense elementary matter arrays. It consists mainly of microscopic dust, the debris of former worlds, continually recycling into new worlds, including planetary systems. Such systems are cosmic habitats that provide the conditions for manifold life forms to arise. They are planetary laboratories for experiments with the diverse novel species projected by the aeons from the galactic core. The laws of physics in the kenoma, the galactic arms, are different from those in the pleroma, the core. In wonderment at her designer species, the Anthropos, the aeon Sophia beholds the genomic template nestled in M42, the Orion Nebula, like an infant gestating in the womb. With intense concern, she anticipates how it will develop. Once a species is projected, the aeons do not interfere in its development. Their interest in each experiment of their inception remains detached, uninvolved, with some rare exceptions. They allow the experiment to develop on its own terms in freedom. They let it unfold without foreseeing or influencing its outcome. Such are the aeonic protocols. Time for the generators runs to countless billions of years, far beyond the range of human measurement. Nevertheless, it scales in proportion with human time. One day for the galactic powers transpires in 26,000 years. Over many aeonic days, running into millions of years, the community of the pleroma observed the seeding of the anthropic genome in different planetary laboratories. They observe how propagules of the germinal plasm separate, one by one and in clusters, to be carried by plasmic currents through interstellar space until they drift down into a favorable habitat, an Earth-like planet. The experiment really begins when a species emerges, assumes animal form, and creates a domain for itself, responding to the specific conditions of the home planet. Its behavior reveals how it fulfills its endowment or not. Together with her counterpart, Thelete, and the other aeons, Sophia studies this long-term process of emergence. The galactic powers attend closely to how the experimental species achieves its pre-designed form and then behaves according to the exact calibration that defines it in evolutionary terms. Over millions of years, which to them are merely months, they see the Anthropos come to expression in 9 distinct world systems, 9 planetary laboratories located here and there in the galactic arms. Doing so, they notice something unusual. Each time the genome achieves animal form in a planetary laboratory, eventually the experiment goes awry. Something causes the behavior of the Anthropos to become unstable and erratic, so that it works against itself. In 9 instances, the experiments crash. Sophia is the youngest of the aeons in the pleroma. Never having designed a species before, she is perplexed by these outcomes. Each time an experiment goes off course, she feels growing concern. Why, she wonders, does it not proceed to its optimal expression? How come her designer species does not succeed in expressing the endowment of its skill set? This turn of events, repeated 9 times, begins to trouble the wisdom goddess. She feels responsible for the inferior results, but powerless to do anything about what's happening. Mounting perplexity compels her to picture how each experiment might have gone differently had she been able to intervene, acting against aeonic protocols. But there is an exception to the protocols. Sophia knew of it by observing genomic experiments initiated by other, more advanced aeons. In some cases, they opted for an advanced technique of intervention, avataric descent. It allows the aeon to descend from the pleroma and enter the setting of the experiment. Doing so, the aeon assumes an animate form, some kind of creature able to perform in that specific habitat. That creature, the avatar, then proceeds to act upon the problem or fault in the experiment and correct it. The aeon Sophia is not practiced in avataric descent, yet she feels passionately compelled to intervene out of love for what she has designed. So she does the next best thing within her powers. She applies pranoia, the aeonic power of intention, to a kind of rehearsal exercise. Reviewing the crashed experiments one by one, she pictures how she would have intended to intervene and keep the species on course to its utmost success, the optimal expression of its endowed skills. All 9 times, Sophia imagines a specific act of avataric descent as she would have performed it had she known how to do so. The intensity of concentration on this exercise of rescue turns the wisdom goddess away from the other aeons, including Thelete. The absorption required to work out these 9 scenarios, all by herself, begins to isolate her. With each incident, she draws more deeply upon her dreaming power, the primary creative tool of an aeon. She involves herself in the fate of the anthropos, her designer species. She does not share her mother-like concern with her counterpart, Thelete. Instead, she dwells upon it independently. Normally, aeons act dyadically, as she and Thelete had done when designing the anthropic genome. Sophia now begins to dream unilaterally, totally on her own. Her continuing review of the faulty development of the anthropos prompts Sophia to seek the cause of the breakdowns. She recalls vividly how she and Thelete had superdosed the anthropos so that it would possess genius potential. Their calibration for the genome was set to a high standard of performance. Now Sophia wonders if the genome was not geared too high, investing the species with capacities it could not adequately control or even restrain. Her desire to manifest a genius species may have produced something like a reckless monster. It shocks Sophia to consider that her experiment involves a prodigy so gifted that it cannot manage its own excessive talents. The dramatic failure of the 9 anthropic strains arouses deep longing in Sophia. She concentrates to the exclusion of all else on the spectacle of the anthropic template nested in M42 in the galactic arms. There it glows softly, an amber stain flushed with magenta and pinpointed with young stars. The attractive pull of that cosmic sight becomes overwhelming. It excites the divine enthusiasm of the aeon, her enthemesis, and once excited, it mounts to a screaming pitch. The compulsion to assist her troubled species finally breaks all boundaries of restraint. It steers Sophia's body of torrential currents outward beyond the limit of the galactic core. The strength of her desire to intervene in the next experiment, so that it does not go off course, exceeds all reservation. It plunges her through the boundary of the pleroma, and outward she goes, erupting in an immense luminous plume across the dark matter of the galactic arms. This event is the fall of the wisdom goddess. For committing this reckless act of passion, Sophia is called prunikos, outrageous, audacious, daring to exceed the rules. Expansion. Planetary systems are laboratories for aeonic experiments. Although the aeons are alive, indeed super-alive, and organic in their own way, animated creaturely life does not arise in the pleroma, nor do stars, even though the substance of the aeons is star material. The plasmic torrents of the sky dragons consists of stellar matter in a raw primordial state, comparable to cake batter in a mixer. Likewise, nucleic acid, the substrate for calibration of a species, exists in the pleroma but does not assume discrete life forms. That only happens with aeonic projection that leads to the seeding of the species in a habitable world, such as an Earth-like planet. Aeonic substance is like molten pearl. It is porous like nougat. It has the inexplicable property of infinite density and zero mass. Weight does not exist in the pleroma, and no gravity either, only levity. Consequently, the hub of a spiral galaxy floats. By contrast, the massive structure of the spiraling arms is heavy, weighted by the material of physical worlds, including astronomical bodies such as suns, comets, planets. The bodies that continually form and dissolve in the kenoma ultimately have the same basis in the dema, dense elementary matter arrays. This is granulated material, cosmic dust and ash, able to combine with water and form organic compounds. There is an old saying, "The mills of the gods grind slow, but they grind exceeding fine." This is as good as any scientific proposition that might be proposed to explain the mechanism of perpetual recycling in the pinwheel arms of a galaxy. The pleroma is like an observation booth for scientists who keep track of experiments they have set up to unfold outside the booth in a controlled environment. Normally, according to protocols, they do not leave the booth and enter the experiment in progress. Were they to do so, they would not have the pleasure of seeing how the experiment unfolds on its own terms. The aeons conduct experiments according to laws of freedom and spontaneity, but they are also free to make exceptions. In other words, freedom to follow protocols in a voluntary way is balanced by freedom to forgo them. The anthropic plasm settles in the nebular cloud of M42, but it does not remain there in a static condition. A distinct species plasm, the genome, is naturally interactive with plasmic streams that surge all through the universe. There is no empty void anywhere. Everything in the universe belongs to the grand weave of electrical fields rippled throughout by Birkeland currents. Astronomers today describe these currents as filamentary and confirm that description by photos. They have also detected and photographed extended fields or veils, such as the Veil Nebula in the constellation of Cygnus the Swan. M42 is such a field. The propagules of a species will eventually drift into a Birkeland current and stream away from its nesting locale, like an acorn that drops into a brook to be carried downstream, where it can wash up on fertile soil and sprout. Only when a species' genome has seeded in a favorable habitat can it sprout into the animal inherent to its design. The aeons observed this happen 9 times in various Earth-like settings across the galactic arms in proximity of the Orion Nebula. These Earth-like planets were not previous versions of the Earth inhabited by the human species today. They were other Earths, home planets to other variations of the single genome, the Anthropos. Human life derived from that specific genome has already come to expression elsewhere in this galaxy. On these 9 occasions, however, something went amiss. Those human animals ended up behaving in a way that caused the experiment in their setting to crash. That is to say, they somehow failed to make the most of their divine endowment and bring it to success, success defined as the flowering of the full actualization of human potential, manifested in harmony with its habitat. The wisdom goddess is a young aeon by comparison to Thelete, who is rather older, and the veterans of the pleroma much older. The older aeons have initiated countless experiments, while Sophia is a relative beginner. And as it turns out, she is something of an upstart, inclined to act on her own. Together with Thelete, she had dosed the human genome with a skill set ideally designed to produce self-actualization at a genius level. Observing the 9 experiments that crashed in one way or another, Sophia realized that they had superdosed the anthropos. Consequently, it proved incapable of handling its own talents to their full benefit. This situation so concerned her that she retreated into herself to ponder it, and wondered how to remedy it, pulling away from the other aeons. Doing so, she indulged in unilateral dreaming. From observing the older aeons, Sophia knew about a technique they use, avataric descent. It allows them the exception of intervening in a divine experiment in progress. The mechanism of the avatar is a kind of virtual body projected into the laboratory setting where intervention is to be accomplished. The creaturely or organic form of the avatar may be human-like or theriomorphic, taking the form of an animal. But Sophia had not tried that technique. She lacked practice, so she could not undertake it at will. Nevertheless, she pictured how she would, if she could. With each incident where she imagined herself come to the rescue of her troubled child, the intensity of her desire for involvement deepened. Finally, Sophia's desire to intervene overwhelmed her. She could no longer gaze helplessly upon the embryonic form of the anthropos cradled in M42 and hold back her passionate concern for its future. Her torrential plasmic body, in its totality, responded with a surge of enthemesis, divine enthusiasm. The surge pulled her to the bounding limit of the pleroma and forced her through it. Sophia erupted as an enormous plume of plasmic luminosity and steamed laterally across the galactic arms toward M42. Summary. The setting of episode 1 through 4 of the FGS is the pleroma, the galactic core. At the conclusion of episode 4, the narrative shifts to extrapleromic events. Sophia's exception to aeonic protocols is one of those stunning incidents in the sacred narrative. The Nag Hammadi writings preserve a concise statement for the protocol on unilateral dreaming. For it is the will of the originator not to allow anything to happen in the pleroma apart from a syzygy. A Valentinian Exposition 36.25. Syzygy is an odd Greek word used by astronomers for the conjunction of celestial bodies. In plain English, a coupling, pairing, match. The preference of the originator that generators work in pairs, dyads, is again another one of those novel, startling notions that come to attention in learning the narrative. It is a preference and not a strict law. As the aeons leave their experiments free to develop on their own terms, so the originator leaves the aeons free to follow this protocol or not. Creative freedom is inherent in the foundation of the universe. The 9 experiments witnessed from the pleroma have been depicted in the imagination of Vedic seers, the rishis, as the 9 incarnations of Vishnu. The fall of the wisdom goddess is an astronomical fact described in mythopoetic language. The Gnostic myth describes events that actually happened in the home galaxy. and it can be proven that this description in its full scope and detail is accurate, supported by evidence. Extensive research by Thunderbolt's project, EU Plasma Cosmology, offers high-resolution photographs of plasma jets erupting from galaxies. This phenomenon is by now well established. The fall of the wisdom goddess is a plasma jet eruption.